Are these requirement areas somehow connected to OKRs? Do you work with OKRs also?
Yeah, sure. We use OKRs. We have a company strategy for a year and like 3 years strategy, and so we have quarterly OKRs. And by the way, I think PandaDoc is the company where OKRs are being applied more or less properly, based on my experience, because I know the OKRs framework, and I also worked with OKRs at several companies over the last 5 years. And usually, like when it comes to implementing OKRs, it becomes a real problem. But here we are dealing quite well with it.
Yeah. What's the magic recipe that you find? What would you recommend teams that work with OKRs?
Yeah. So one important thing to understand, even referring to like official certifying bodies of OKRs, like OKR Institute or OKR International, is that OKR is not a like framework for cascading goals. It's a framework for alignment of goals, and that means that it shouldn't be only top to bottom direction. It should go in both ways. So how we operate with OKRs right now, we have these company goals for a year regarding our revenue, regarding our growth rate, etc. And we, of course, like every time we come to design OKRs for the next quarter, we understand where we are right now. And we take those company inputs into account when designing OKRs for the requirement area. So every requirement area does it differently, but I can give the example of the requirement area I work with. So we usually split the OKRs design session into 3 parts. The first session is where only the track leadership or like requirement area leadership takes part. It's product director, engineering director, product managers, engineering managers, scrum masters, like designers, product marketing managers. So usually a group of up to 15 people. We take a look at the OKRs of the previous quarter. We take a look at the company goals, and we try to draft the objectives for the next quarter. And objectives level is where we stop for the first session. So we draft objectives. We try to brainstorm as many as possible of them. Then we choose top 3, which most people agree with. During the next session, still within this group, we try to draft key results for those objectives. And once again, we brainstorm as many options as possible. Then we challenge every option and try to choose not more than 3 or 4 for each objective. But what's also important, during the third session, we involve teams into that process. So we don't come up with team OKRs, because our teams work with a single backlog and with a single set of OKRs, but we involve them into taking a look at the draft we came up with, challenging this draft, like suggesting some ideas of their own, and then together generating some features or initiatives which could contribute into achievement of those OKRs. And before that session takes place, we usually try to have first check in with the company management to see what do they think about those OKR drafts, so that we don't throw away everything to a trash bin after we involve the teams. And in the end of this exercise with teams, we have a set of initiatives for OKRs which were already shown to the company management, and we do a like prioritization, basically breaking down those initiatives into buckets of quick wins, low-hanging fruits, like big bets, and that enables us to do prioritization of those initiatives. So this is like a 3-step sequence: requirement area leadership drafting objectives, requirement area leadership drafting key results, getting feedback on that from the company management, and then together with all team members or team representatives finalizing the OKRs and drafting the initiatives which would contribute to achieving those OKRs.
Well, sounds amazing, and sounds really done for alignment, not for just goals distribution or goals cascading. Does it fight silo?
Yes, I would say, but I think it's not only about how you design OKRs, it's also how you then work with them. And of course, like if you then say that, okay, we have those 3 OKRs, we have a set of initiatives contributing to each of those objectives, and we come up with initiatives which last for a whole quarter, then it still creates silo, because usually like you fix some team to work on that initiative, and if it takes the whole quarter, it basically gets siloed within this initiative for the whole quarter and doesn't look around. That's why we are also experimenting with this length of the discovery and delivery process, to cut it down and to have each team to work at least on 2 or 3 initiatives in a quarter, so that they could not get into this kind of silo.
Yeah, and do you sometimes like, how do teams share with other teams? Like are teams aware what other teams are doing? I assume that in the beginning in the process, yes, and then how do you sustain this awareness?
Yeah, sure. So this is a very important part, and this is where exactly the adaptiveness gets born in the organization, in my opinion. So despite every team working on some specific initiative, we don't like break down teams into silos in terms of communication. So we still have common sprint plannings within the requirement area, common product backlog refinement sessions, common retrospectives. And during the product backlog refinement sessions, for example, after we like discuss some general topics, we take a look at our OKR state and our roadmap, and we split into breakout rooms to refine specific initiatives. We encourage teams to send representatives to other rooms which are working on different initiatives, so that they at least have someone who is aware of what's going on in other initiatives and may, like, for example, bring this information back to the team, or like if there is some domain expertise needed to another team, like share that domain expertise. And we also encourage teams to work together on within the initiative. So we try to avoid having single team initiatives. We try to have initiatives which at least require 2 teams, and this means that those teams work together over some period of time. In some sprints, they may have a common sprint goal. In some sprints, they may have separate sprint goals, but still that helps to avoid the siloing of the teams.
Do you have any team rituals on the way during this quarter that again bring focus light to the OKRs or to the initiatives that are being done in teams?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, we try to check out our roadmap every sprint planning and every second PBR. So every
second week.
Yeah, every second week. We introduced it just recently, and like more for the sake of fun than for the sake of alignment. But we have monthly track update meetings or requirements area update meetings where we share some news. We share the progress of OKRs. We also like share some stuff like who has a birthday in this month, who has a work anniversary in the company in this month, etc. And that's how we try to retain all teams in a shared knowledge space, not in a like isolated knowledge space. So OKRs and roadmaps are part of our sprint plannings. They're part of our product backlog refinements, and this is basically how we keep teams aware of what's going on the higher level.
Awesome. No, amazing, Denis. Thanks a lot for sharing this. I have one more topic. For us. It's like there was a very interesting also question from the crowd there in the conference. Remember, it was about scaling with people, and we had then this discussion on LinkedIn about situation when sometimes you get the round and investors push you to scale with people, but maybe it's not always that you are ready to scale with product yet, and you scale with people. In this situation, and I wanted to ask you about an advice maybe for founders or people who organize teams. What do you do if your investors push you to scale in people and you are not ready? How do you feel? What's your take on that?
I don't have any advice, because I've never been a founder myself, and I don't know I didn't experience firsthand what it's like to communicate with the investors and to be responsible for income of multiple hundreds of people. But I think that at least they need to approach this decision consciously. So they need to understand, okay, we need to scale now, but what are the things we will pay attention to when scaling? What are the things we're going to measure, and what are the let's say, like red flags or alert sirens that we're going to pay attention to. Like just to be clear, so PandaDoc is not the only company I've experienced hypergrowth with. This is the third company already. Before that, I worked at N26 when they were hiring like crazy, and I worked at another company which grew from 35 people to 200 people in 1 year. Mm-hmm. So I've seen those hypergrowth stories approached differently. And what stands out to me is PandaDoc and another company I had a conversation with about 5 years ago. So they were also getting ready to scale. They wanted to double the size of their R&D department over the next year. And when I asked their CTO what is the key important thing for him to pay attention to, he said that, those people we currently have in the company, they've been with us since the very early days of the company, and they're very important to us. And we also know like what's our internal NPS, so how engaged and happy are people in this company. And my key goal when scaling and doubling in size is to make sure that this NPS doesn't go down and decrease over time. So I think it's very important to actually understand what kind of culture and what kind of environment you want to preserve when scaling, and then understand how you could potentially measure or sense that, and what is the acceptable level below which you are not ready to go. For example, like if you understand that, let's say we want to have lead time like this, average lead time like this, or average NPS like this, and we start hiring, and then we see that over time this metric starts to decrease. This may be a signal for us to slow down the hiring, to stabilize the system with what we've added over time, and then after our metrics go up again, we restart hiring or continue hiring and growing. So metrics like people happiness, like efficiency of work, and also I really like metrics like average revenue per seat, like average revenue per employee. And like, of course, like if this decreases significantly, probably you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and when you think about who should be involved in organizations, in the actions that, help adapt to fast scaling in people, like what roles in organizations are crucial from your perspective to collaborate and to drive the process of fast scaling in people?
I think this should be a common initiative of like founders of the company, or like a C-level of the company, HR department, recruitment, and also people responsible for the process in the company. So this is how we at least try to do it at PandaDoc. We had a clear vision of what we want to keep in the company and what things we are ready to sacrifice. And we had a big group of people from different functions working together on that. So understanding, okay, like this is our process now. When we have 12 teams in 1 year, we want to be of 20 teams. Okay, what is the process we want to have by that moment? What are the metrics we want to attach to this process? And what should we do to shape up this process as we grow? And I call myself an organizational design consultant because this is what I also do besides working at PandaDoc. So I think that organizational design is the thing that should not just be delegated to someone. This is a thing that company founders and executives should pay close attention to, because very often I observe the situations when, for example, imagine like a fintech startup, they've raised another rounds, the investors expect them to increase their growth and also, of course, to increase their headcount. And many startups follow the slippery slope of hiring industry recognized experts from, like, for example, let's say traditional banks, and make them help them to grow. But the problem is that very often those people, when they join the company, they bring with them the mental models and structures which slowed down those banks they were working for. So I think this is why organizational design is the thing that co-founders and people responsible for the company's success should not delegate to anyone. They should be really hands-on with that. they need to apply like systems thinking tools and critical thinking tools to that process in order to identify, okay, this is our process, this is the goal our process optimized for, this is the goal our structure is optimized for. When we make another org design decision, we need to assess, does it bring us closer to our optimization goal? Does it move us further from our optimization goal? And okay, what are the pro and cons of this or that decision?
Amazing. And what is the role of teams in this process?
I believe that teams should be considered as the, let's call it, minimum viable building block of the organization. So I really believe in the power of teams, in the power of brilliant individuals coming together and becoming even more than the sum of their individual parts. And I think that companies more and more understand that they should treat teams as minimum building block of the organization, that team is not something that can be merged together or torn apart every now and then without any decrease in the productivity. And I think that many organizations nowadays are ditching the traditional resource management practices, which is, I think, a very good thing. So we need to respect people in the teams as capable individuals who are grown-ups, who know what they want, who know what kind of environment they need to thrive, and support them in creating that environment.
Yeah, amazing.